If you like growing food, then you might like eating food. And if you like eating food, then you might like cooking food. Well, go check out the first season of Backyard Kitchen, available on Tubi for free. Available on all smart TVs and online. That's TUBI, all free, first season of Backyard Kitchen. All right, since you guys are gardening in spring, in the last episode, we basically told you a number of times, don't plant too early, be careful, be careful. Well, now we're going to go on the other side and argue maybe we should be planting earlier. Right here on the Backyard Gardens podcast.
To have a good harvest, one must plant good seeds and must also use the right kind of fertilizer. The carrots have grown large and firm. How good they will taste.
Welcome to the Backyard Gardens podcast, where we talk about all things gardening. We're your hosts, Ben and Batavia, and you can find me gardening in the country.
And you'll find me gardening in the city. Get ready as we dig deep into this
wonderful world of gardening, where we learn to grow and grow for change. All right, everybody, check it out. First season of Backyard Kitchen is officially live on Tubi. That's TUBI for free. Go check it out. You can watch it right on your TV. Do it. And go watch it. That's do it for both. There you go. Also, become a patron if you'd like. You get 2 episodes a month that are not aired regularly. It helps support the show. And also t-shirts. Last day of spring is the final day for the code BYG Spring, where you get 25% off of t-shirts, mugs, and all the good stuff that we have. If you don't know when the last day of spring is, then you need to figure it out. Learning lesson. Okay, this is part of gardening in spring that is such a pain in the derriere. It's just like, I've come to realize that it's like, maybe you should, maybe you shouldn't, maybe we do, maybe we don't.
I have a terrible sense of time. Let's hold a wisecracking, and I know everyone that knows me knows this. There are all kinds of
time and date doesn't know that. They think that you're
right.
On point.
That's why I'm so dependent on it. Like, have you seen the memes where someone's like in the shower and there's a text saying, "Are you on your way?" And the person it's me replying, "Yeah, but I'm just still in the shower." Like, that's absolutely me. It's terrible, terrible, terrible. But I say that to say, I always underestimate how much time it's going to take me to do a thing. And so I, in the spring, struggle because I have a list of things that I need to do, including planting. And it just takes me, 1, much longer to do every task. And then 2, as I'm working through things, it's like something shiny over there. Let me go and dig into that, Yeah. So it's a struggle for me. And I'm going to, spoiler alert, I know I'm not planting early enough. There it is.
I don't know. Maybe you are and you just don't know it yet. We'll have to see what we hash through this episode, what knowledge we bestow upon each other to see if we are actually screwing up or not. No, it's not screwing up. And just to be frank, honest, I want to come and say we are not here to tell you that you are not planting early enough and you need to get out there and get in it. That's not what we're going to be here saying. We're just proposing the question and providing some possible answers and solutions to these things.
Okay, I can go with that. Yeah. You
can go with it? Okay.
Yeah, let's think about some of these.
I always get nervous when I say that because you'd be like, that doesn't apply to me.
No. I mean, I think these are the things, like, there's always this feeling of, I feel like I'm behind, right? So maybe we're going to get to the end of this. It's not going to be for me. I know I'm late. But maybe we're going to get to the end of the episode and some folks are going to be like, no, I'm right on time. Or another approach is get to the end of this episode and folks will hear, okay, I should consider these other 2 things, right? And that'll get me into the schedule that I want to get things in the ground when I want to get them in the ground or in the container.
Ooh, there it is. Mm-hmm. Well, since you brought up container, let's talk about the schedule for all of this stuff.
Is that your French accent?
My schedule. I don't know where that's from. It's some kind of accent where they say schedule, and I like it. So from now on, that's how I say it. Schedule. the different methods that you're planting can really guide you into this direction of planting, or are you planting early enough, and really planting earlier, I would say. So I think it's safe to say there's a number of options, but we're going to stick with 3 here: in-ground, raised bed, and container. Correct, Amundo?
I'm with you.
Okay. She's jiving with me. So, which one do you think is the coldest?
I'll say...
Wait, let me rephrase that.
Oh, good night.
Which one is the coldest with no modification?
Nicely done. I'm going to go with in-ground is the coldest. Final answer.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know if that's right, but that's my answer.
I'm going to go with container.
Okay.
Yeah. With no modification, that is. No modifications.
Yeah. So no plastic coverings, no, sitting inside of a thing. The reason why I say in ground is because there's no shelter of any sort. It's like a raised bed. At least there's wood, right? To kind of trap some heat is what's happening in my mind. And the same idea with containers. In my mind, that's the way I'm processing it. And so if it's just in ground, it's kind of out and exposed to whatever you've had. I mean, we're talking about like places that have had freezing temps. Like there's been some either frozen soil or pretty cold.
Yeah, and to be quite honest, we are talking about both spring crops and people trying to squeeze in their summer crops. Your tomatoes and stuff like that. So, I think when it comes to warming up a bed for planting, I do agree that the in-ground is the coldest because you got to warm up the crust of the earth. You know what I mean? But then as you step up to each one, the raised bed is elevated. So, that wood can act as an insulator as well, but it's also a smaller space.
Wood or whatever material you're using, just so,
Right. Yeah. Maybe you're using metal or something. And probably if you're using metal, it'll probably heat up even faster, I would think. Which is a problem in summertime. But then containers are even smaller. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when you do the containers, and you can warm up, but then it goes the other way around at night.
Yep.
Each one loses heat faster. So container, raised bed, in-ground.
I just felt cold for the containers in the in-ground or like the raised bed, right?
Like you feel sad for them. Yeah, because if you think about it, the root is totally out of the ground and it's not exposed, but there's a thin layer between that and the outside temperature. But then each one of those, and this is my mind, so feel free to interrupt me, is each one of those can be modified to increase the temperature more and more. And I think containers can be modified the most.
Yeah, just because it's much easier to transport containers compared to anything else, right? There
it is. That was it. Spoiler alert. Okay, episode is totally over. Thanks, Batavia.
It's a good thing we have like 18 other things to talk about, though.
No, but you're exactly right. You can move them into another room into another area inside or something like that. So
your garage, your shed, even the idea of huddling. Now I feel like containers are people, huddling them together. While I can't say how many degrees this would increase it by, the idea is that they're in more close proximity. So and then if you talk about raised beds and what I've done for a few years, not necessarily to get an early start, like that's what's in my mind, but it's not quite worked out that way. For instance, last year I have a raised bed that I covered last fall because I didn't get around to shredding the leaves that I collected, and so I knew this spring I didn't want to have to wait for those leaves, if I left them out, those leaves to dry so I could then shred them. So I put them in all of their bags inside of a raised bed, covered that raised bed with plastic, right? based on our temperatures, that bed still froze, and it was still frozen, but it thawed much earlier than my other raised beds that weren't covered at all. So that bed never got snow on it. It never had like freezing snow sitting on top of it. It just basically was, colder and ultimately freezing because of the consistent temps that we have here in Chicago. But the gift that is, though, at some point when I get my act together, that allows me, if I continue with that method, to get to that soil because it'll be workable earlier, which is it's a hashtag, start when the soil is workable for a lot of the plants.
Ugh.
And this is like really early spring we're talking about.
Yeah, you're talking, right, which quite honestly, I would venture to say 95%, if at least, of our listenership is out of the woods for that for right now. So, no, I agree with that too, because, when it comes to huddling containers together, I don't know if it works, but damn if it doesn't make you feel good to do it.
Yeah.
It makes you feel like you huddle them together, then you cover them with a blanket, and then you can put plastic over. It just feels right.
Is there no bedtime story there? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, there's always a bedtime story.
Get your little. I'm going to go back in time. Get your little. What do they used to call them? Your where you should listen to music. I can't even think of the name of it. And so long ago.
iPod.
Yeah, your iPod. Like plug it in. Well, maybe not. I don't know if iPods play podcasts. Anyway. Let's play the Backyard Garden podcast for those containers as they're huddled together. They can listen to the soothing voices of Ben and Batavia. I imagine that would keep them warmer.
You know what we should do? We should start let's do a niche playlist on Spotify where we make a playlist just for your containers at night that are soothing them. And warm notes, and then maybe see how many people will listen to that and play it for their plants at night.
Oh, until you laughed, I was very much on board.
Oh, I'm serious. It's ridiculous, but I'm serious. We'll do it.
Consider it done.
I'll start searching for some stuff now. Yeah, consider it done. By fall, you will have this out. But no, and then, I think the containers are the biggest winner for this one, just for the fact that they can move in and out. Mm-hmm. I'm not a big container gardener, but I do utilize containers, and I have like this love-hate relationship with them. I go in and out of it a lot. Mm-hmm. But just by doing that, I think you give yourself the best option. And really, like in my area, I could start my tomatoes. I can take my seedlings of my tomatoes, put them in my pots, I would say almost 6 weeks earlier. If I was diligent enough to move them in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out. Mm-hmm. I think I could do that.
Yeah.
Maybe I should do that next year. That would be crazy if I was getting tomatoes at like April 1st.
I wish you would or someone would, because I just don't know if I have it in me. And there's nothing that tells me that it wouldn't work, but I don't know. I feel like for these heat-loving plants, getting them out earlier, if it's still not heat, there's still not a lot of heat. I don't know how much it benefits. I think there's almost like those are 6 weeks of the plant just surviving,
I would have to put it in my greenhouse during the day and then lunk it all the way up to my main house every night, and you go back and forth. And then I could do it, but man, I would be tired. It is not worth all that. It is like I was talking to my mom the other day, and we were talking about digging up dahlias for the winter and bulbs and plants and stuff and potting them up for the winter to keep them warm so you could plant them back out. Mm-hmm. And this is not an opinion of the Backyard Gardens podcast, but it is close to it. She was like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. That is way too much work. And I was like, yeah, but what if you really wanted a certain type of garden? She's like, then you just don't plant it. And I was like, I hear you, Mom. So she's really against it. But you want to talk about a time-consuming effort, that's a time-consuming effort. If you had like your whole garden out there and you had to dig it up, put it in, or if you had to bring multiple pots in. I know there's people that do it, and I know that you do it as well, don't you? You do for some stuff.
Yeah, I definitely do it when it comes to hardening things off. Like even things that can stay out all night, there are a couple of different reasons why I'm moving them to different places, I'm talking
about like digging up bulbs and stuff. Do you do that?
Oh, no. I believe in it, but I worn out by the time we get to the time of year where we're digging them
Yeah.
up. I want to
That's
be
my
that kind
thing.
of gardener, but I've just not.
Oh, dude, if
I
you have that
aspire.
dedication, you have that dedication,
Yeah.
you're good. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, that's crazy. But I think it's possible. So listening to what we've said here before we go to the break, you have those three options. Your in-ground is naturally going to be your colder one.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to be the last one you're going to plant in. Now, the raised bed depends on how big the raised
Yeah.
bed is,
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah.
You know, if you've got some giant, like 20 by 20 raised bed, maybe you could plant on the edges of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you could start on the edges and work your way in, maybe.
And that size of it, you wonder if, let's even call it like 3 feet high, right? I wonder if that last foot down, how frozen that gets. Like the top of the soil is what's going to end up being frozen. And that's where, again, if we're talking about freezing places, that's where you're going to be basically digging at, right? Yeah, you're right about
Yeah,
that.
I don't know if... Go ahead.
You're right about the edges, though, as I think I have spent quite a bit of time poking around in my soil, trying to make a mental catalog of where things are frozen. And one other asterisk, and then we got to get to the break. The areas that you're planting in, like where those containers are, where that raised bed is, where that in-ground bed is, it really depends on the placement of the sun. So we haven't talked about this a lot here, but my backyard garden, there are a lot of things that obstruct it. Houses, trees. My front yard garden is like completely out to the world. And the spaces that thaw first, absolutely our front yard versus the backyard. But there's pockets in the front yard even that thaw first, earlier than some of the others.
Right. So be careful if you're working with your raised bed, but just know that it may not freeze all the way down, but it takes longer for the depths to warm up. So if you're planting a tomato and you have to dig down, you're going to get into issues. So let's go to this break, and then we'll come back and we'll carry on. But while we're at the break, go ahead and go to Tubi and find Backyard Kitchen and just bookmark it so you can watch it after this. We'll be right back. Hey, everybody. Thanks for checking out the Backyard Gardens podcast.
If you like what we're doing and you want to continue to support the podcast, head over to our Patreon page to sign up.
You can also make a one-time donation using PayPal. Both of these links are in the description.
With your support, we can continue growing and helping others in their gardens. See ya. We want you to be a part of our gardening community. DM us a picture of your garden at Backyard Gardens TV on Instagram, and we will share it with our listeners.
Okay, I do need to make one quick statement. This is like at the end of a movie where they're like, no animals were harmed during the filming of this. No plants shall be harmed by planting them too early after this podcast. So we are, without coming out and going over weather again, we are paying attention to weather, hopefully, at the same time as we're having this conversation. So just keep that in mind as we move forward through this. Right?
Yeah, I mean, you know what website to go to, right? First-time listeners don't, but
Then
long-time listeners do.
timeanddate.com will help you, but
Yeah, because I mean, wherever you want to go and
Seriousness.
find this information, if you want to go somewhere besides the best website on the internet, timeanddate.com, like your
backyardgardenstv.com, you mean?
Yeah, exactly, right? You should absolutely put a link there. I don't know if you don't have one already, why we don't. But
I'll put it on there. I
can appreciate that. So the, kind of weekly forecast is one thing. Your extended forecast, which pulls you out like maybe 14 days. By the time you get past 14 days, who in the hell knows, right? But also your history, right? So especially if you're new to gardening and you're trying to start early, trying to get an early start, you want to understand even beyond your zone, right? So we talk zones, we talk, average, last frost, all of that stuff. We also, though, want to talk about the varying temperatures and have that in our minds. Now, I don't do like full-on analyses. I have done some spreadsheets, don't get me wrong, but these are things that I basically store away in my head and I kind of keep an eye out for as time goes on each garden year. So there's no like handbook, you're not studying or anything, but these are things that you should be considering.
So you're not studying that stuff?
No, not this stuff.
I'm joking. I'm joking. No, but I mean, it's like, seriously, when you look at it and the temperature and, you look at the long range forecast, be very, very careful of that because, for instance, I'm taking young David on his first backpacking trip in the mountains tomorrow.
Oh.
And I've been watching the weather. So 10 days out, it was supposed to be 60 degrees. Yeah. And then here we are the day before, it's supposed to be 34 degrees. Yeah. So the forecast will change. So just be careful. Yeah. But we need to really talk about the life cycle or the grow time of a certain plant because we need to discuss that in this whole thing about planting early enough.
I'm uber excited about this piece of the episode.
I know you are.
Well, maybe I'm talking to the other people that didn't know, like that are listening to this.
I forget that people are listening to it sometimes.
So I'm uber excited about this portion because as I initially thought about it, I thought about spring crops and, kind of going into, being able to harvest them. And then now what's next? Like, am I going to run into a bunch of heat for some of these spring crops? But that's not it. It's more than that. So I'll let you tell them exactly why I'm excited.
Well, it's, there's a lot to it. And at the time in which this is released, the ship has probably already sailed for planting a lot of your earlier spring crops. People might be planting greens and stuff like that still, but for the most part, I think we both agree that like it's time to really start thinking about your warmer weather crops. And so what we're trying to do here on this one, and this is my opinion, correct me if you think I'm wrong, is we're not trying to tell you to plant them earlier. We're trying to tell you not to plant them too late. Yeah, no. Well,
I do want, this is where, it's 6 in one hand and half a dozen in another, whatever that means. Once we're getting, and I think you're spot on.
It's the same thing.
Yeah. That's
what it means.
Yeah. I think that's a thing that a buddy and I say. Like, anyway, so I think that you're spot on when it comes to you're reaching the end of your row for those heat sensitive spring crops, right? So a lot of our spring crops.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
I felt it when I said it, right? Yeah. I felt the moment. Like, I felt the moment like someone else should be ringing the bell. Like,
and you sat up a little bit when you did it too. I saw
my shoulders went back. Yeah. And so, come on, I'm trying to stay on track now. Yeah. And a snort. Come on. All right. Let's just be serious.
I can't help it.
This is important stuff.
Sorry.
So, and now I lost it. See what you made me do?
You were talking about it was coming from 6 one way, half a dozen the other about me saying that we're planting too late.
Yeah. So when we talk about getting out of the spring crops, which are going to be many of them are going to be heat sensitive. And then I move into kind of your summer crops. And a lot of us have maybe not the longest summer season, but remember, I've talked about being able to put tomato plants in June and July. Now, it is a cautionary tale because what I end up getting later on, to your point, is far fewer ripe tomatoes off the plant, as an example of tomatoes. Right. If we use peppers, a bunch of pepper buds, but that pepper plant maybe didn't produce as much as it did, right? So while there's that battle of, is it hot enough for these plants to really thrive, right? Even if you're planting them earlier in the spring where it may not be like full on a heat wave, they still are getting established, right? That's still there's going to be some benefit to that. And I wouldn't, by design, ever plant, tomato plants in July again. I mean, that totally was a thing multiple years that I did. Just didn't get around to the garden until then. I would never do that in my area now, right?
Yeah, see, I can get away with that, but at the same time, like, you start thinking, okay, well, I can put it in July. Well, maybe I can do it in August. So it's the same for me where you could put it off and put it off. But the problem is, and a lot of people, they're trying to succession sow or rotate their gardens by the seasons or what have you. And so we want to get the most out of each plant that we can. And I'm not saying like, I feel like sometimes when I say that, I'm worried that people will be like, well, damn, he's just all about analyzing and it's making sure that if the plant can produce 25 tomatoes, he's going to get 25 tomatoes. That's not what I'm saying. But what I mean is, like, you want to give it enough time to be able to get something out of it. You know what I mean? You want to make sure that you're getting a decent crop off of each plant. And by putting them in too late, it's kind of like a snowball effect where you hurt that plant, and then if you but you're going to wait. I mean, who pulls out their tomatoes when you're really supposed to? Most people wait until the frost to pull them out. And then by that time it's too late. So, but let's say you were trying to pull stuff out like you were supposed to, but you wanted to get some more tomatoes because you got them in late. Now you can't get your cabbages in or your Brussels sprouts or, whatever.
Another way to look at
your
that
cole crops
is most of us are watering our gardens, right? So there's time that you're spending doing that. If you have it on an automated system, there's still water. I don't know, does every state in the U.S. in particular, does every citizen pay for water? We pay for water in Chicago. There's a whole water bill here. So let me just say that, right? There's an expense.
No, if you have a well, you don't pay for wet water.
Okay, well, yeah. So there's an expense there. I mean, obviously there is the environmental piece of, like, you're using this water to feed this plant. You may be fertilizing.
That's the key.
Yeah, you may be fertilizing, right? So that's an expense. That's time you're spending doing one or both of those things, right? Let's say you're pruning tomatoes. It may not be a whole bunch of single stem pruning, wink, wink. But let's say that you're tying up tomatoes. Like, you're spending time nurturing this plant. And so when we say, all right, let's pretend this tomato plant will yield 25 tomatoes. If I knew it yielded 25 tomatoes, I'm right with you. I want all 25 of them. But I surely don't want to plant it so late where I'm only really going to get 4 or 5, so.
Right. And still, wait for the other 23.
Yeah. And still, you're still expending all of that energy doing all of those things, right?
Sorry, 20 or 19. Excuse me, everybody. Don't do math in public.
Yeah, I don't know why you keep on trying to do it. You know why I bow out.
But I mean, but see, and then you have to think about, on the other hand, let's say that you've planted, so you're wanting to put in a cabbage plant. You live in a good area, and you're going to have consistently more cool weather. You don't want to wait too late, because then you're going to want to put something else in that place. And let's face it, it's a crop that's going to give you one thing to harvest. And that's fine if that's what you want to grow. There's nothing wrong with that. Grow a whole garden of it. I don't care. But the thing is most people, like I got a message the other day, guy's starting his first garden. He's been listening to the show and watching the YouTube videos.
Hey!
Yep, he's in Michigan. So
Michigan
thank
guy.
you so much. Forgot your name, but he was asking if he should, how does interplant? And I was like, and I answered him back, and I was like, dude, it's your first year. Like, I wouldn't even worry about it. But if you want to, and blah, blah, blah. And I went into it a little bit and pointed him in the right direction. But, so people are doing that, and they want to do it, and they want to get more out of their gardens. And that's totally respectable. You know what I mean? But it's not necessary to do that. So a lot of people, like, for instance, my garden right now, at the time of recording, which is obviously before it comes out, my garden is only 25% full. I decided to go light on my spring crops this year.
Okay. Why is that?
Because I didn't want to fight just exactly what we're talking about. I didn't want the confusion of, okay, this is going to take this long, this is going to take that long. Okay, I want this. I think, what was it last year? It was my Chinese cabbage. I wanted it to head up before I planted something. Then it was too late. And not to mention the fact that everything that I would plant now, I've been eating all winter, and I'm kind of tired of it. So it's just good to let the garden rest a little bit.
Say that again, though. Say that again. Everything you've been eating.
I'm tired of good, because I've been eating everything that I would plant in the spring all winter, because I was able to grow it, and I got tired of it. So there's no point in growing it. There's no point in taking care of it. Don't you write that down so you can throw it in my face later? Jerk.
That's. Is anyone keeping track of
intel?
Is anyone keeping track of the apology list, like the apology count?
It's gonna be high.
Let's add one to it just now. Once we get off the air, and I tell you why I was writing what you said down.
I'm sorry. There you go. Everybody heard me.
You want to say it
But,
one more time? Because we still got another 30 minutes in the episode, and I'm sure you need to use
Yeah.
another sorry.
I'm running out of those. The sorry card hasn't been paid. But yeah, so we also need I know that this isn't popular with a lot of people, but we also need to discuss a little bit about saving seeds. Because if you want to save seeds, then you're going to significantly add time to the growth cycle of each plant, the life cycle of it. So I know you did collards last year, right?
No, I did kale
Kale.
in 2020 going into 2021. So in my springtime last year, I had kale that was going to seed. And I still have those seeds. Like, that's a whole story there. Anywho, the plant is in my basement. Seeds are completely dry,
Wait.
obviously. Yeah.
Oh, okay. The seed pods are in your basement.
No.
Oh.
So, the long and short of it, the plant was planted in 2020 seeds, direct sowed. It was Russian kale. I put it into the yard probably late spring in 2020. It grew just a little bit, not much. And then it overwintered. I didn't plan on it. In 2021 in the spring, it came back with a vengeance. So I harvested those leaves, enjoyed them. I wanted to leave the plant in place to let it go to seed to see how long it would take. But then the better part of me took over and I wanted to plant that area. I dug up that plant, put it in a bucket, let the seeds dry in place outside. There's so many freaking seeds. I never harvested them that summer or fall. And then by the time I got to the end of the year, right, when we're getting to cold weather, I'm just like, I'm going to put them in my garage. But then I had to make room in my garage, so I had to move the seed bucket, because they're everywhere, into my basement with the idea of, over the winter, I'll just collect these seeds. So here we are in spring of 2022. It's still on my to-do list.
With a buttload of seeds on a dead plant in the basement.
Exactly. This is absolutely why I can't dig up dahlia tubers in the fall.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's like I still have seeds from last year in paper bags, seed pods. I got them confused, and I know that one is one and one is the other. All I got to do is take a couple seeds out and try and get them germinated so I can see what they are. They're still sitting there.
That's the only reason why, that story is the only reason why I remember what this particular plant is. But to your point, so if we're talking about like the life cycle of a plant, from the point of we're in spring now, you're planting that. Are you planting something that you want to let go to seed? I just walked through a method that for some plants you can take and still be able to get seeds that, and I've actually started some seeds from that. Like they're going to produce Russian kale, like it's going to happen, right? So that's one method. I wouldn't say that would work for everything, but if what you're planting,
dude, you should be banning Russian kale.
No, yeah. So yeah, I really felt the emphasis when I described it, but here we are. So consider kind of what you want to do with that plant over the course of its life. The majority of my plants I pull out. I don't let the majority of these things go to seed. I don't save seeds from everything. But if that's your intention for one or more plants, consider the time that you started that plant when you put it into your garden and how long that's going to take. Another view of that is if you're not going to let it go to seed, are you going to get enough off of that plant before it's next ready for you to plant something else? Right?
Well, see, that's where I was getting at when I originally asked you was...
I'm bringing it back.
The time you did. It took us a long time, but we got there.
Yeah, I actually went to dump the trash out, but then I started talking to a neighbor in the alley, and then I just realized, oh wait, we're still okay. Here we are. Yeah,
we're still on podcast. No, the reason why I asked you is because I wanted you to say like how long did it take for you to be able to get the seeds, or to the point to where you brought the plant in to go ahead and finish its timely death.
It was midsummer.
And it's a long time is the point.
Yeah.
It's like I did the collards last year, and I think it was like an extra almost 2 months of it sitting there forming seeds and everything. So it adds more time to it. Now, when I go to save seeds, do you plan to save the seed, or do you just say like, hey, this thing is going to go to seed. I would like to have some of these seeds. Let me leave it. Which one do you do?
If I stumble across a plant that's gone to seed, then I'm inclined to say I'll leave it. I don't normally, it's not a part of my garden design where I'm going to plant this
That's how
thing,
I am. Yeah.
I like that to be just like I want to dig up dahlia tubers in the fall. Like I aspire to be that type of gardener, but I'm not that.
Yeah. Now, when we talk about peppers and stuff, like, yeah, of course I'll save the seeds, but that's totally different. You're not waiting for it to bolt and all that stuff. So we need to make sure that it's like, hey, if that's what you want and you see it, you need to make sure that you're going to give it enough space because the plant's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and taller. And it's more than likely going to flop over too and lay there.
You do want your peppers to be mature if you're saving seeds. So there is a
Overly
little
mature.
bit of that, but the timing is not as long, if you will.
Well, the thing is with those is you can continue to harvest while you're doing this. You know what I mean? So while you're letting one pepper go to seed or a couple peppers, you can continue to harvest off of the plant. So it's not, but I mean, you're not going to be eating kale when it's full blown bolting and seeding and stuff. You're not, it's just not going to be tasty. Or like broccoli. I mean, the head of the broccoli is the seed. So I don't want to make this a seed saving episode, but what the point of it is we need to think about how long it takes. So if you look at the seed packet and let's just keep something easy like lettuce and it's 25 days of harvest, I think is a lot of times what they write, which is not correct, but I think I've seen 25 days a couple times.
The marketing is baby leaves at 25, 30, 40
microgreens.
Days,
No, it's not microgreens, but it is baby leaves. But you need to be aware that like it's going to take longer than what the seed packet says, and then if you want the seed, it's going to take, I would say, almost twice as long as that seed packet says at minimum. So you need to just be aware of that. And if that means that, and so what that says to me is know that we're going to switch away from saving seeds altogether. If I'm going to grow my cabbage and I want to get ahead of cabbage, I know that cabbage can get out there earlier. So I need to be careful and get it out earlier. And I also know that my tomatoes can probably get out earlier. Like you said, for years you did June 1st, and that's like a very common thing in your area. But you could probably get in a little bit earlier. And it's like in this video I had last year, I said, I opened up with it. And I was like, I'm interplanting my beans and my peas. I just watched this again, so that's why I know. And it was, I planted them 2 weeks ahead of time. And you might be thinking, so what is 2 weeks? What does it matter? Well, at the end of the season, in those 2 weeks, I will can 4 quarts of beans because of those 2 weeks. You do the math about how much more that adds to it. You know what I mean? It's a big difference.
There's also the element of when it comes in, it's a great segue to kind of the next steps once you get from the plant producing, right? Whether it's I want to be able to eat, these things as a part of, the 2022 Backyard Gardens Challenge. More to come on that. Oh, you didn't know I was going to bring that up now, did you?
I didn't.
Or, just preserving, right? So if you're doing big batches of things, right, is it easier for you to do that at the end of August or sometime in September? And we're not touching on it enough, maybe when it comes to end of summer and fall. Weather can be very different than what it's like in the summer. Right. So, I got caught up there. So,
it's my fault too. I'm sorry.
That's okay. A part of what we consider when it comes to pulling tomatoes off the plant. Is it the same quality tomato that you pulled off in the height of the tomatoes in August if you're pulling them off in October, right? So there's that whole idea of how long do you want this plant to be in place? How long do you want it to produce, right? At what point is it quality? Let's say you run into disease at some point late in your summer. Can you get those tomatoes? I mean, this is a really common method. Plant something earlier. A lot of people do this with potatoes. Plant something earlier to try to dodge whatever that disease is that normally hits at a certain time of year.
Yeah, and that's what I do too, because now you have to take into account that as well. What problems do you normally have? I normally have problems with my zucchini, so I need to get them in as early as possible so I can get them out. I usually get leaf spot on my tomatoes, so I need to be prepared to basically start over from scratch. You know, so there's all of these things. So I need to be prepared to, the earlier the better. So stop. I'm getting confused in what I'm saying. My phone went off and I stopped. I shouldn't do that. But yeah, so just make sure that you know what you're planting and the life cycle of that plant. And when I say the life cycle, like, I hate that we talk about tomatoes all the time, but it's so easy to bring up. If that plant is going to produce, and I think, what does the package say for them? Like 70 days?
Yeah.
It's not going to produce once in 70 days. It's going to produce for months after that 70 days, you know, for another 60 days. So be aware of that and think about that so you can get the most. So you don't need to plant, maybe you don't need to plant 5 plants. You only need to plant 3 if you plant them early enough, and then you get as much as you had before with 5.
Hey now. All right. Okay. That's the kind of math I do in public.
Yeah, that's the kind of math you do until you do it and it's wrong. So just give it a shot and see what happens. Because then you got to clear the way to get things out, right? So what does that mean to you, Batavia?
That means that I have breaking news that I am, for the purpose of saying it out loud where other people will hear. And now I'm trying to back away from it. I'm trying to pedal away from it, backpedal. I am considering very strongly pulling some of my summer crops right around September 1st to get fall crops in. And so when I think about what my tomato plants look like on September 1st, how much that's still on the vine, I should say it that way. This episode is right up my alley when it comes to trying to get my plants in the ground earlier, with the hope of that will then allow me to get to more ripe fruit sooner. Right.
Yeah.
So my tomato, I mean, as many years as I've been gardening, I've always had tomatoes or peppers on the plant, you know, September. Always. I have them on the plant all the way through September, through a lot of October. And it hurts me to say out loud, like, so wait, you're going to pull them out of the garden 2 months earlier? So there are 2 things happening here. And I've not tracked this closely, but the amount of new fruit that's produced between September and October, and the amount of, so that's limited, I believe, in my garden. And then I also believe that the amount of fruit that's ripening, there's that window of, it's definitely, there's more ripening than that's starting fresh on those plants. But my hope is that I would have already gotten enough tomatoes. I would have already gotten enough peppers, because September seems like a sweet spot for me. All the way up until maybe like September 10th or something, I'm able to put transplants in, kale. I'm able to put lettuce. I'm able to put spinach. I'm able to put radishes. I'm able to do some of this fall planting if I can get in at that window. If I try to plant some of these things at the end of September, I don't get a lot of production from it, right? So It won't necessarily be my entire garden. The spaces that I want to plant in, you know, I want to make sure that I have those things cleared. And that's a part of what I'm trying to do with my garden design this year as well. The very last, and this is really more housekeeping, the very last benefit, if I'm planting earlier and then letting those plants get out of the way for the next round, is it allows me to get ahead of kind of my end of year garden cleanup, which, you know, if we go full circle, gets me in a better position that next spring. Because right now, what I'm still going through is the struggle of getting things ready to get things planted, right? And it's, again, you combine, I'm dashing out in the garden right before the first frost, you know, in October. The weather is getting colder. It's been a long season. The garden's looking pretty peaked, right? You know, and so I'm just doing the absolute minimum at that stage, where if I kind of spread out what I'm doing a little bit more, my hope is that I can be a bit more productive when it comes to maintenance even. So again, I'm going to label that housekeeping. That's definitely not sexy, but it's a part of our world.
Well, no, it is. And, you know, I just realized that I totally skipped over getting the garden ready in the beginning of the show.
That's okay.
But it goes in perfectly, because what you do this year sets you up for next year. And you can start it now. You can start it in summer. You can start it in fall, however you want to do it. But these things will kind of all set you up. And getting the garden ready will allow you to get things going sooner, and then getting these things out of the way. Because, I mean, let's face it, we sit on right here in these chairs and with these mics jammed in our face, talking to you about succession sowing and interplanting and all of this stuff. But if you can't get the original crop out of the way, none of it matters.
Yeah.
It's just going to get leggy and be weak. And then you're just going to start with a totally bad scenario. So like last year, if I go back to my Chinese cabbage, I remember I had some desi squash underneath it that I was waiting for. And I planted it and I was waiting, but I was also waiting for the Chinese cabbage. Dude, the cabbage was eaten up by snails so bad. It looked like somebody shot it with like a machine BB gun. Just da-da-da-da-da. I mean, I wouldn't put it on anybody's plate.
Yeah.
You could definitely eat it, but I wouldn't put it on a plate. But I left it there, and like a quarter of my plants just didn't really want to grow because they were just shaded out, because I was just like, I'm going to wait. And so I took that lesson from last year and then moved on to this new portion where I'm like, you know what? No, we're not going to do that. And that's the biggest thing. So get them in earlier so they can develop, and then get them out of there. Don't hesitate to get these things out of there. So your kales, especially if it starts to bolt and you don't want to save seed, go ahead and pull it. Don't even wait. Just pull it.
Yeah.
Who cares what the flowers look like? You're just going to waste time.
Yeah. And, and I haven't investigated this, but I bought some transplants, some kale transplants. This is one of the September plantings last year. And I've had kale uncovered that has come back the second year. It's biennial, right? And produced some more leaves, but also went to seed. My kale, I ended up pulling it in the early part of April, was dead. Coming back, the one that I planted in September. So I don't know if it was, I don't know what the story is there, but I said that to say, I could have pulled that much earlier, but I didn't because I was really waiting, for it to produce a little bit this year. There's that thing about, have you gotten enough, right? And if you have experience with growing this thing, and let's say we're now in April going into May, and you've planted something, and even if it's something that's normally a cool weather crop, in April going into May, and it produces, I say go ahead and give it a try again, right?
Yeah.
Make the move. If you've not planted it, and if you're like looking at it's May and you're trying to put broccoli in and you have a hot summer, I'm going to say let's wait until the fall for that. I'm going to say let's wait until next spring if you plan on planting next spring. Like, let's make some hard decisions now, because you don't want to put that broccoli plant in place, have it take up space where there's something that could thrive in that space instead. So this part generally makes me uncomfortable because I'm always like, give it a try, but there's a part of kind of smart gardening here, which I know you love, hashtag it. I know you don't. That's the funnier part. But, you're going to put something there to grow, right? It may not be the exact thing you wanted, but a part of this episode is to hopefully help you not end up needing to make this decision. But if you're sitting here and you're there, go ahead and let's move on to the next crop that's going to love the growing conditions that, you're heading into.
Yeah. And if I'm there, then I do that exact thing. Now, I don't think that there's an issue with trying something out and letting it and seeing what happens, because you can sit here and listen to us all day long about how broccoli grows, and we're going to step all over broccoli for a second, how it grows and how big it gets, this, that, and the other. But until you actually try it, you're not going to know how big it gets and what the issues with it can be, or if you even like to grow it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So if you enjoy eating it, like, by all means, give it a shot. But I would not recommend somebody that's, not overly experienced in gardening. And I'm speaking to myself. I mean, I don't think anybody's ever an expert in gardening. I don't recommend somebody starting a whole garden bed of broccoli. you know, or cabbages or something like that, because that one harvest deal is kind of the issue.
Yeah,
me,
this is where, when you talk about early or not, this is where kind of your garden neighbors, if you have them, are helpful. People that are in your area. If you don't have the experience of your own, other people and their experience could be very helpful here, because a lot of this is very specific to your area, right? We harp on this, and rightfully so, when it comes to cool weather crops, the fall and the spring. Make sure you're planting the right thing, right? Make sure you're planting things that will enjoy and thrive in this weather. We don't talk about it a lot in the summer, but it's as important. Make sure you're planting things that enjoy the heat of summer. I have, as much in many years as I've been looking at seed packets, and it hasn't been all of my garden career, but for these last handful of years, you know how it has the map on a lot of seed packets? Not all, but some of them, they have the map with the bigger companies. And I stay pushing the envelope. It's like April through June. And it's like, well, it's only July 5th, you know? And through June probably was a stretch for insert this crop, right? And so I've had years of trying that, and then guess what ends up happening? Either I'm overcome by other things in the garden and I didn't tend to it, or again, I should have planted it probably mid-June at the latest, right? So I just say this, you obviously temper your expectations if you want to give it a try, because I'm all for, garden experiments. But I'm also for, if we're going to say, let's get the most out of this garden bed, let's plant something that's more of a sure thing than something that we're trying to take a chance with, recognizing that we're probably late at this point.
No, that's exactly right. And I think it's all about having expectations too, and I mean, one good thing to do is go around your area. I mean, hopefully you live somewhere where there's some farms somewhere within a decent drive, and go ride around and see what you got out there. Go to another gardener's house, like you said, do something like that and see how these plants are growing, see what people are growing in your area, and you can get it kind of an idea,
Whether
it's like in my area. Go ahead.
I was just going to, whether you're buying from big box stores or not, or garden centers or not, you want to talk. So I'm a talker, clearly, right? So you want to talk about people that you could almost, this is going to be offensive, but you can almost tell the folks that are in the garden centers and the nurseries that know, right? So if you don't have someone that's near you, because we've received that feedback from people, you don't have anyone in your family or friends, they're not gardeners, your neighbors aren't gardeners. If you're a version of Batavia that talks to everyone, you can ask people as they're looking at transplants in the store, right? Oh, have you tried to grow so-and-so, so-and-so? And a lot of people that are in the stores, doing what we're talking about, man, pull up a chair, because they're ready to talk.
Yeah, they're just dying to tell you something.
Those people are me.
Yeah.
I'm those people. Yeah.
Yeah, you are dying to tell somebody something. That's why we get along so well. So, get your garden ready, decide what method you're going to do, life cycles, all that stuff. And then, get this stuff out of your garden, people. Stop watching it grow. Make some room. We're coming through. I got a transplant in my hand and I'm going to jam it down. But speaking of which, it's that time for us to get the recipe of the day. If you guys want some Backyard Gardens gear,
go to the link below and check out our t-shirts, mugs, pint glasses, and other gear.
All purchases go towards helping to support the show, so thank you so much in advance, and we hope you enjoy.
We want you to be a part of our gardening community. DM us a picture of your garden at Backyard Gardens TV on Instagram, and we will share it with our listeners. All right, so recipe of the day, and this is a recipe that I'm sharing from a well-known cook on the Food Network. Listen, yeah, there's a plug there. So Anne has this recipe that's asparagus with Parmesan cheese with a vinaigrette drizzle, if you will. So I am all about looking for ways to enjoy asparagus because I guess in like 3 years I'll have some asparagus to eat. So we're going to do a bunch of asparagus. We're going to cut the bottoms off as you normally would, the really woody part. We're going to get a big pot of water. We're going to, yeah.
Get a pan of water and see how it works out.
Pot of water. We're going to get our asparagus ready, put the asparagus in, let the water come up to a boil, right? We're going to, as that's starting to boil, you're going to get separately a pan or a pot or bowl with some water. You're going to salt that water. Yeah, I know, right? This is what she says. And as a part of this, what we're basically doing is blanching, right? So once that asparagus comes up to a boil, take the asparagus out, put it into the cold water to blanch it. And then we're going to basically create our mixture. In a small bowl, we're going to have olive oil. It's going to be about 3 tablespoons, red wine vinegar, same amount, 3 tablespoons. We're going to get some grated cheese, as much as you want, really. But her recipe calls for about 2 tablespoons, a little bit of salt. And then that's what we're going to actually drizzle over the asparagus. Now, this is probably the secret ingredient, which I've never seen, but I'm sure at fancy restaurants they have it. She has a hard-boiled egg that she has basically chopped up and drizzled on top of the asparagus. I feel like I gotta try it because there must be something about the textures and the creaminess that makes that enjoyable.
Yeah, I can give you that.
Oh, like
I would
you
do
can,
that.
Yeah,
I
you
would
can see
definitely.
that.
Yeah, I could see that.
So,
what's the name of the recipe?
Asparagus with Parmigiano Reggiano vinaigrette.
Oh wow, there's a whole lot of Inianos in that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little upset you didn't give a backyard kitchen recipe, but that's okay.
Why would I do that? Because we want people to actually
want to watch it.
Yeah, watch the show and then get the recipe.
Amen. Amen. No, and it's funny too. That show was birthed from this segment that we hate doing so much.
We love the segment, but it's hard coming up with
It's hard. It's harder than putting the show together.
As I said it out loud, if there's 50 some episodes a year, that means really we only need 25 episodes. But I guess once we get recipes. Or 25 recipes, yeah. I guess as we get into year 3, it's now getting harder.
Yeah, I mean, how many recipes do we have, And it's funny because I try a good majority of them, too.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So, but I don't retry them, which is unfortunate. That's just the nature of the beast. I don't recook stuff a lot. I don't know.
There's only so much room, especially when, it really you have to get it right for it to stick.
I don't know. I get some fuel in the tank, boy. There's some room in here. I'm here to tell you. If it's right...
Oh my gosh.
I'll go ahead and have it.
Family moment. So my grandmother, who I speak about on the show, she's passed away some years ago. I can remember being in my 20s, and that's when I started picking up just a few pounds here and there. And since I was a really thin child and young adult, and I'm like, oh, okay, And so she said I can remember sitting on the floor of our living room. I come over to visit, and this is why those visits were short back in those days. And she said, so clearly someone that's basically raised you can see a difference in you. And so she said, it was something like, you better be careful, girl. You're going to stretch your stomach out. And once you stretch your stomach out, there's no going back. And so my response is, oh, mama, no. And so flash forward 10 years and I'm like, that's what she was talking about. So yeah, there's plenty of room over here too. Let's just say that.
Hey, look, ain't no shame in my game. It's out there for the world to see. But it's just funny because, we don't hate it, but it is increasingly difficult. But it's it's become this thing that we've talked about eliminating it. I just can't do it.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it's an important connection to what we're talking about.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, it's, so what do you think? You think people are going to get out there and plant earlier now?
I don't know. I don't know if they're going to plant earlier or if they're just going to say this is too much to think about and I'm just going to plant when I want to plant.
Yeah.
Which is okay too.
I'm kind of on the fence about myself being either way too, to be honest. It stresses me out to be I'm going to go earlier.
Yeah, every year I have the intention of doing whatever it is earlier. And as of the recording of this podcast, I have t-shirt, sweatshirt, jacket, larger kind of worker's sweatshirt on. So what's that? 1, 2, 3, 4 layers on.
It ain't that cold up there.
It's not, but I'm cold. And a pair of stretch pants and a pair of jogging pants. The temperature is 40 degrees with overcast. And as long as you're moving, you're normally okay. But boy, I was out before we were recording and I was freezing and decided to come in. You know how it is when it's dampened and there's no sun. But anywho. Yeah. I say that to say I find an excuse every year to delay whatever my activities are that would allow me to plant earlier. So here we are.
Well, and I think it's about being, here goes another word that we've used a lot lately, realistic. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You know what I mean? About what you want to do, what you're willing to do. And if you're not willing to get out there and work early in the garden, then don't do it. Yep. There's nothing to say you do. Like, we want to grow. I'm assuming that people want to grow as much food as they can, but at the same time, like, it's not all about like having a factory farm on your property. Mm-hmm. It's about enjoying what you do. So I think we talk about these things in a way that you can communicate the need or the desire to do more and help you, so you can tweak it to your ability in any way you want. You know what I mean? And I think that's the good thing about gardening is there's no hard and fast rules, really.
Yeah.
You can do things the way you can plant tomatoes in July, and let's say you only wanted to eat green tomatoes. Mm-hmm. So what? Mm-hmm. Just plant in July.
That's all anyone ever asked me for. It's a really good example of that. I think that I reference my previous experience because that's the thing that's closest to me. And I think that everyone else should do that as well. If you are 2+ years into gardening, you have a whole, garden season last year to refer to. Last year was the earliest that I planted. I got my spring crops in the first week of August, the first week of April. And I didn't make it this year. First week of April, right? But now I'm looking to say, all right, I was a handful of days off, but I should still be okay, all things considered. There's some things that I wasn't early enough with last year, and now I'm really taking a chance. I'm hoping for maybe a cooler, who says this? Batavia never says this, a cooler spring. Give me a few extra days on the back end.
Well, and a cooler spring can mean you want a cooler spring, not a cold spring.
Yeah, no.
So there's that, and those terms in this world that we are in, this gardening world, that's two different things. Yeah. Cool and cold are two different things.
Yeah, great point. The interesting thing is with my layers, some of these cool weather crops love exactly the temperature that I'm getting. Love the overcast, love the dampness. They're getting all of Mother Nature's rain. Like, they love this. So that's one thing I had to learn and impart through this show, being okay, as a part of the podcast, being okay with, it's pretty cold. Maybe you're uncomfortable, but there's some vegetables that thrive in this. Embrace them,
Yeah, they do. And those are the things that you should be focusing on, not you specifically, but in general. If you really want to get out there and go back to our old series we had where we were growing as much food as we can for a year, then this is a perfect time to take advantage of that. Radishes and lettuces and kales and cabbage and all that stuff. So, but the tomatoes and cucumbers and all that are the star of the show. I think we all agree with that, basically.
Yeah, I think we all agree with that because that's like the way it should be, right? The ancients wanted it that way. No, seriousness, it really they're just lightning bulbs going off in my head because of this idea of that last piece of the episode, getting out of the way, right? So there's some moments that I'm going to cut bait, right, when it comes to spring going into spring going into summer. And if my most favorite time of the garden is summertime, let's get those things out there to allow them to thrive. This is aspirational be. Like I'm not exactly there, but I aspire to be.
Well, there's one thing I do have to say. I could sit here all day and talk to you, Batavia, and it's a good possibility that I could, but we can't do it on the air, so we need to cut this one. So everybody, plant when you want to plant early, plant late. I don't care, just plant. But be realistic about what you're going to do, seriously. And please check out all of our links below. Check out Tubi for the Backyard Kitchen, all that good stuff. We love you guys. I'm happy to be here sharing spring with you all. That's all I got to say.
Hear, hear. See ya.
We hope you enjoyed today's show. Please follow us on YouTube at Backyard Gardens TV.
Instagram at Backyard Gardens TV. Over on our website, backyardgardenstv.com. And then we have Patreon at Backyard Gardens.
And don't forget to check out our links below to help the show. Thank you so much for joining us as we learn to grow and grow for change. Cut.
Now you know why people feel like celebrating at harvest time.
All over the world, people have feasting and good times when the crops have been gathered in.
Hey everybody, thanks for checking out the Backyard Gardens podcast.
If you like what we're doing and you want to continue to support the podcast, head over to our Patreon page to sign up.
You can also make a one-time donation using PayPal. Both of these links are in the description.
With your support, we can continue growing and helping others in their gardens. See ya!
If you guys want some Backyard Gardens gear,
go to the link below and check out our t-shirts, mugs, pint glasses, and other gear.
All purchases go towards helping to support the show, so thank you so much in advance, and we hope you enjoy. We want everybody to have a garden, and we're going to give you a chance to win free seeds every month.
Head over to backyardgardenstv.com and enter your email address to be entered in all of our giveaways.
Good luck!
We want you to be a part of our gardening community. DM us a picture of your garden at Backyard Gardens TV on Instagram, and we will share it with our listeners.